On Thursday, October 3, 2024, at exactly 8:12 a.m., on the corner of West 47th Street and 9th Avenue in New York City, a woman named Maya laughed at a homeless man's artwork and had no idea that by 9:17 p.m. that same night his face, and her cruel words, would be on every screen in Manhattan. Before lunchtime, her video of him would be the kind of clip people share, for the drama, and before midnight she would be sitting on the floor of her apartment, shaking, watching a live press conference where the man she mocked was introduced to the world as someone almost everyone had heard of, but nobody expected to see like this. As you listen, pay attention to every small detail, because the clues about who he really is are there from the very beginning. And before we go any further, if stories that challenge the way you judge people hit you in the chest, take a second right now, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that you never actually know who you're looking at. Now, let's go back to that sidewalk, that morning, and the moment everything started to unravel. The air was cold enough to sting but not enough to bite, that in-between October weather where steam rose from the subway grates in soft white clouds. Commuters pushed past each other with coffee cups and headphones, eyes straight ahead, dodging the puddles left from last night's rain. At the base of a brick wall, next to an overflowing trash can and a stack of flattened cardboard, sat a man in a faded army green jacket. His gray beard was tangled, his hair tucked under a navy knit beanie that had lost its shape years ago. A paper coffee cup with a few coins in it stood in front of him, but that wasn't what people were stepping around. Spread out in a careful semicircle on the sidewalk were paintings. Not quick marker sketches, not sloppy tourist portraits. Actual paintings. Thick strokes of oil on canvas board, layers of color that caught what little light the morning gave and turned it into something warm. One was a view of the Hudson River at sunset, but from low on the ground, like you were sitting on the cracked concrete of the pier yourself. Another was Times Square at night, but instead of neon chaos, he'd made it look almost lonely, the lights blurred like teardrops, the people reduced to silhouettes. The last one, propped carefully against his worn backpack, was a portrait, a young woman standing under scaffolding, rain dripping from her umbrella, city lights behind her like fallen stars. Maya noticed the artwork before she noticed him. She was scrolling through her phone with one hand, her other wrapped around a to-go cup from the cafe on 46th. She worked as an assistant at the Halpern Gallery on West 23rd, one of those places where white walls and silence were part of the brand. Her job mostly involved answering email and carrying other people's coffee, but she liked telling people she worked in the art world. That morning, she was late. It was 8:12 a.m., and she was supposed to be at her desk by 8:30. She knew she should keep walking. But the splash of color on the gray sidewalk pulled at her peripheral vision. She stopped, the crowd flowing around her, and took in the scene with a quick, practiced scan. Cheap canvases. No frames. No protective plastic. Paint still slightly tacky, catching dust. The man's hands, resting on his knees, were stained with color, deep ultramarine under the nails, a smear of cadmium red across his thumb. Next to him lay a knotted roll of brushes. They weren't plastic, dollar store brushes. They were old and worn, the lacquer on the handles chipped, the bristles shaped by years of use into perfect, obedient tips. One of them had a band of tarnished silver near the ferrule, engraved with initials almost worn away. Her first thought wasn't "that's impressive." It was, "I've seen better in first-year student exhibitions." She exhaled sharply through her nose and glanced at the time again. 8:13, her phone buzzed with a text from her coworker, Leah. "Halpern is in early. Do not be late today." Maya rolled her eyes, slipped her phone back into her palm, and did the thing that would set everything in motion. She opened the camera app. The angle she chose was slightly above, tilted just enough to include his cup, his shoes with the separating soles, and the paintings in one frame. The homeless man looked up as the red recording dot blinked on. His eyes were a pale, washed-out blue, but there was nothing cloudy in them. They were sharp. Alert. The kind of eyes that had seen everything and learned not to be surprised anymore. New York never runs out of street artists, Maya said, pitching her voice into that sarcastic tone she knew played well online. What do we think? Gallery material? She let the camera linger on the painting of the woman under the scaffolding. Or just another guy trying to sell Pinterest vibes for $20? The man's gaze stayed on her, steady. He didn't flinch. He didn't tell her to stop filming. He just watched, his hand still. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice rough as sandpaper but measured. "They're not for Pinterest." She felt a flicker of something at his tone, something almost like being scolded, but pushed it away. The camera was still rolling. "How much for this one?" she asked, pointing at the portrait. He studied her for a beat, then answered, "However much you think a face you don't recognize is worth." Maya snorted, the sound tiny but cutting. "Then I guess not much," she said, letting the words hang in the air like a caption. In the moment, it felt clever. Like something people would comment on with crying laughing emojis. She ended the recording with a tap, slid her phone into her coat pocket, and took one last quick look at the paintings. For half a heartbeat, she noticed something strange in the brushwork of the river painting, the way the light on the water wasn't just white streaks, but tiny, deliberate dashes of pale green and lavender, like the surface was breathing. The kind of detail you didn't normally see outside of actual galleries, outside of names that sold for more than she made in a year. But her brain dismissed it under layers of hurry and habit. "Good luck with your thing," she said vaguely, turning away. "You too," the man replied, and there was something almost like amusement in his voice. "The world's small. Careful what you put in it." She was already walking when he said it, the words barely pushing through the traffic noise and distant horns. She checked the time again. 8:16, if she cut across 8th and didn't hit any red lights, she could still make it. At 8:24 a.m., she pushed through the glass doors of the Halpern Gallery, the familiar scent of fresh white paint and coffee beans washing over her. The gallery space on the ground floor was empty, as it always was this early. Paintings by established artists lined the walls in perfect symmetry. One wall was dedicated to a series of large, abstract canvases, layered fields of color, priced at $32,000 each. Maya had spent yesterday dusting them carefully, her own fingers hovering inches away from paint that could pay off her student loans 3 times over. Leah popped her head out from the office at the back. "Maya. You're almost late," she hissed, then dropped her voice. "Halpern's in a mood. The shipment from Berlin came in damaged." "I'm here, aren't I?" Maya said, dropping her bag under her desk and logging into her computer. The Halpern Gallery email inbox blinked alive with overnight messages. She clicked instinctively over to her social apps first, thumb moving faster than thought. She uploaded the video before the office coffee finished brewing. Caption, "When even the sidewalk has art for sale." New York never disappoints. She set the location tag to Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan, and added a few hashtags she knew would catch. #NYC, #StreetLife, #ArtWorld. Her finger hovered for a second over the post button. A tiny, uncomfortable twinge slid across her chest, guilt, or maybe just the echo of the man's steady eyes. Then she remembered the way Halpern had barely looked at her when she'd suggested featuring younger, unknown artists in their next group show. "We don't do charity," he'd said, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. Out here, it was eat or be invisible. Sarcasm was a currency everyone seemed willing to pay attention to. She hit post. 8:31 a.m. By 8:49 a.m., the clip had 200 views and a handful of laughing reactions. Someone commented, "That's actually kinda good though?" Another replied, "Nah, looks like hotel lobby art." The dopamine tick of each new notification pushed any lingering doubt further down. In the background, Mr. Halpern's voice carried from his office. "The Carver estate just confirmed the dates," he was saying on the phone. "January 12th opening, exclusive previews the week before. Yes, the Lost series. Yes, the River studies. Of course. People have been waiting 10 years for this." Maya's ears pricked up. Carver. Even if you weren't deeply into art, the name Adrian Carver floated around like a myth. The reclusive painter who'd dominated the early 2000s with his luminous cityscapes and haunting portraits, then vanished in 2014 after a car accident killed his wife and daughter on the George Washington Bridge. Some said he'd moved to Europe. Others whispered about rehab clinics or mental breakdowns. His last known painting had sold at auction in 2021 for $5.2 million. The art world talked about him the way musicians talked about cracked vinyl records: fragile, irreplaceable, and profitable. Maya leaned back in her chair, listening as snippets of conversation drifted through the half-open office door. "We've secured 6 originals and the sketches," Halpern said, a note of pride in his voice she almost never heard. "Yes, authenticated by the Carver Foundation. The provenance is airtight. The market is starving for his work. We're expecting collectors to fly in from Tokyo, London, Dubai." She glanced down at her phone. Her video kept climbing. 1,300 views. 4,700, comments stacking faster now. "Wait, the last painting is actually fire," someone wrote. "Why is she clowning him?" Another, "Those brushstrokes are insane for a dude on the street." Maya replied to that one with, "Maybe he's a hidden genius." The sarcasm was automatic, a reflex she hardly noticed. At 10:06 a.m., someone tagged a popular art meme account in the comments. At 10:23, that account reposted her clip with the caption, "When the art world meets the real world, skull thoughts?" Their following was in the hundreds of thousands. Notifications on Maya's phone became a constant stream. She put it face down on the desk, pretending to focus on invoices while little bursts of adrenaline kept tapping at her brain. Around 11:40 a.m., while she was emailing a shipping company in Berlin, Leah walked over, holding her own phone in front of her like it was a breaking news alert. Have you seen this?" she said. Maya frowned. "Seen what?" "This." Leah turned the phone around. On the screen was a screenshot of Maya's video. The homeless man's face was paused mid-blink, the painting of the woman under scaffolding visible over his shoulder. Above it, in bold white text, the art meme account had added, "Is this Adrian Carver?" The post already had 32,000 likes. For a second, Maya thought it was a joke. Carver? The Carver Halpern had just been talking about? The Carver who was supposed to be somewhere between legend and ghost? "That's not funny," she said. "They're trolling." Leah sat on the edge of her desk. "It's not just them," she said quietly. She started scrolling, thumb moving quickly. "Look." Other accounts had picked it up. An art blogger Maya recognized, a woman who ran a Substack about lost and stolen paintings, had posted a side-by-side, one of Carver in 2010, standing in front of a giant canvas in a museum, younger and clean-shaven, and the still from Maya's video. The same high cheekbones, now hidden under a beard. The same sharp blue eyes. She'd circled certain details in red, the way the hand held the brush in both images. The tilt of the head. The almost identical color palette in the river painting behind him and one of Carver's known works. The caption underneath made Maya's stomach drop, "This might be nothing. Or it might be the story of the decade." Has Adrian Carver been painting on New York sidewalks under a different name? No, Maya stammered. "No way. That guy he was sitting on the street. Selling paintings for $20. People lose everything," Leah said softly. "Even the ones who used to have everything." The words landed heavy. The computer screen in front of Maya blurred for a second as her heart started to race. She grabbed her own phone with shaking fingers and opened her notifications. Her video now had 312,000 views. The top comments had shifted. The laughing emojis were still there, but now they were buried under others. This didn't age well. Even if he's not Carver, why mock him like that? Imagine clowning a literal legend on the street. Her chest tightened. Her own voice echoed in her head, "Then I guess not much." At the time it had felt like nothing, just air shaped into words. Now, hearing it again in her memory, it sounded cruel. Smaller than she'd meant it to be. She scrolled down to the video and watched it again, this time seeing it through all those other eyes. The camera hovered over his cup, his shoes, the paintings. His hands didn't move. His eyes stayed calm, but she noticed something she'd missed live, a tiny flinch at the corner of his mouth when she laughed. That was all. The comment telling her to take it down had 57 likes. Her thumb trembled over the options. Delete. Turn off comments. Leave it. If she deleted it, it would already live on in screenshots and reposts. If she left it, she looked like the villain in someone else's documentary. Don't do anything yet, Leah said quietly, as if reading her mind. If that really is Carver, this is bigger than you messing up on TikTok. Maya swallowed. Do you think it is? She whispered. Leah hesitated. I don't know. But look at the brushwork in that river painting. And Halpern just said we're getting his Lost series from the estate. She dropped her voice even lower. What if the estate doesn't know where he actually is? At 12:02 p.m., the Halpern Gallery landline rang with a sharp, old-fashioned trill that made both of them jump. Maya picked it up, forcing her voice to steady. Halpern Gallery, this is Maya, how may I help you? Miss, this is Channel 7 News, a woman's voice said, clipped and professional. We're putting together a piece right now on a possible sighting of Adrian Carver in Hell's Kitchen. Your video is being widely shared. Are you available to comment on when and where you shot it? Maya froze. She could hear typing in the background, the low murmur of a newsroom. I have to ask my boss, she said. Of course. We'd really like to include your side before this runs. The story is moving quickly. She scribbled her name and number, hung up, and walked to Halpern's office on unsteady legs. He was standing in front of a wall of Carver prints, his hands on his hips, phone pressed between his shoulder and ear. He ended the call when he saw her expression. What is it? He asked. There's something online, she began, throat dry. About a homeless man in Hell's Kitchen. People think he might be Adrian Carver. They're using my video. For the first time since she'd started working there, she watched actual fear flicker across his features. Show me, he said. They gathered around her computer as she pulled up the posts. He leaned in, his cologne sharp and expensive. His eyes narrowed at the side-by-side comparison. The room felt smaller, like the walls had moved closer. Jesus, he whispered. That's not impossible. He clicked on the paused frame and zoomed in. The man's eyes stared back from the pixels, clear and intense even through digital compression. He always said if he ever disappeared, it would be on his terms, Halpern muttered, half to himself. But this. How could the Foundation not know? Maya's stomach twisted. What do we do? She asked. He straightened, the gallery owner mask sliding back into place. Nothing, he said. We don't speculate publicly. We don't confirm anything. If it's him, the Foundation will handle it. But they already called, she blurted. News people. They want to know when I filmed it. Halpern fixed her with a look that made her feel like a smudge on his white walls. Then you tell them what you know, he said. The time, the place. Nothing more. Do not say the word Carver on camera. Do you understand? She nodded, pulse thudding in her ears. At 1:15 p.m., she stepped outside to call the reporter back. The sky had darkened, gray clouds rolling in faster than the forecast had predicted. The corner where she'd filmed the man was 3 blocks away, out of sight, but it felt suddenly too close. I shot the video at around 8:13 a.m., she said into the phone, her voice oddly distant to her own ears. On the corner of West 47th and 9th. He had several paintings laid out. I was on my way to work. Did he say anything to you? The reporter asked. He said the paintings weren't for Pinterest, she said, cheeks heating. And he said the world is small. That I should be careful what I put in it. There was a brief silence on the other end. Thank you, Maya, the reporter said finally. That's very helpful. As she ended the call, raindrops started to fall, slow and fat. She shoved her phone into her pocket and looked down the street, her feet moving before her brain could catch up. She had to see if he was still there. By 1:29 p.m., the corner where he'd been sitting was almost empty. The trash can was still overflowing, the brick wall still wet with rain. But the semicircle of paintings was gone. Only a faint rectangle on the pavement showed where his backpack had been. Thin rivulets of color traced along the cracks in the concrete where water had caught leftover flakes of paint and dragged them away. She turned in a slow circle, scanning the edges of the buildings, the doorways, the subway entrance. He was nowhere. A man selling umbrellas on the corner shook one open with a snap. "You buying, miss?" he called over the sound of the growing rain. "Have you seen the artist who was here this morning?" she asked, stepping closer. Older guy, gray beard, army jacket. Paintings laid out. The vendor shrugged. "Cops came," he said. "And some suits." They talked to him, then he packed up. Left before the rain. "Did they arrest him?" she pressed. The man frowned, annoyed. "Didn't look like it. More like they were begging him for something." "I mind my business." She thanked him and walked back toward the gallery, the sky opening above her. Rain soaked her hair, her coat, the edges of her shoes. Her thoughts were louder than the storm now. What if it really was him? What if she'd stood in front of one of the greatest living painters and reduced his work to a punchline? Back at her desk, she toweled off with paper napkins and reopened the video for what felt like the 100th time. This time, she paused on the last painting, the portrait of the woman under scaffolding. In the lower right corner, just above the edge of the canvas, there was a signature she hadn't noticed before. It wasn't written in large, looping letters. It was small, cautious, almost shy, A.C. Her heart stumbled. A.C. Adrian Carver. Or it could be anyone. Anthony Cole. Alice Carter. Anyone. She zoomed in until the pixelation blurred the letters, but the shape remained familiar. She opened a new browser tab and searched Adrian Carver's signature. In seconds, she was looking at auction photos, gallery shots, museum documentation. Every signature was different, evolving over the years, but the A had a distinctive downward flick at the end, and the C curled in on itself just slightly, like it had second thoughts about being fully seen. The one in her video had the same flick. The same curl. A wave of nausea rolled through her. Around 4:50 p.m., as the gallery quieted and the rain outside turned to a steady curtain against the windows, a notification popped up on her screen from a news site, breaking, possible sighting of reclusive painter Adrian Carver in Manhattan. Viral video sparks investigation. She clicked. There he was, frozen mid-blink, his beard damp from the morning mist, his eyes fixed on the camera, on her. The article pieced together what little was known. Sources close to the Carver Foundation refused to comment. An anonymous insider suggested that the brushwork in the sidewalk painting was strikingly similar to his known river series. A retired curator was quoted as saying, "If this is Carver, then we have collectively failed him." They embedded her video directly into the article. At the bottom was a line that made her stomach twist even tighter. The young woman heard mocking his work in the video declined to comment on her behavior. She hadn't declined. No one had asked. But the narrative didn't care. At 7:03 p.m., Maya sat on her living room floor with a bowl of untouched takeout and the TV remote in her hand. The city outside was a blur of red and white lights through the rain-streaked window. Her phone buzzed like an angry insect hive on the coffee table, friends texting her variations of "Is this you?" and "Girl, you're on the news," and "You really messed up with this one." She flipped through channels until she landed on Channel 7. A red, breaking news banner stretched across the bottom of the screen. Developing story tonight, the anchor was saying, as speculation grows that beloved painter Adrian Carver, who disappeared from public life 10 years ago, may have been living on the streets of New York City under a different identity. They cut to footage of the corner of West 47th and 9th, now crowded with camera crews and onlookers, umbrellas clustering together like dark flowers. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind where the paintings had once been. Reporters spoke into microphones, gesturing at the empty sidewalk like it was a crime scene. Then they played her video. Hearing her own voice fill her apartment made her flinch. What do we think? Gallery material? Or just another guy trying to sell Pinterest vibes for $20? Her past self laughed. The homeless man looked up. However much you think a face you don't recognize is worth. Then I guess not much. The anchor's expression shifted into the practiced look of solemn concern. We are not showing this clip to shame the young woman, he said, while doing exactly that, but to highlight how easily we dehumanize those around us, regardless of who they might be. They cut to a pre-recorded interview with an art historian. He stood in front of a projected image of one of Carver's famous river paintings from 2006. The use of light here, he said, pointing, the way the reflections on the water are built with unexpected color, the layering of lavender and pale green under the white, this is a hallmark of Carver's mature style. Now compare that to the painting from the viral video. The screen split, showing the sidewalk river painting side by side with the museum piece. Even through the low-resolution clip, the similarity was undeniable. The same breathing water. The same quiet electricity in the brushstrokes. Either this man has studied Carver's work more closely than any forgery we've seen, the historian continued, or he is Carver. Maya's throat closed. She gripped the edge of the coffee table so hard her knuckles whitened. The segment cut to a quieter shot, a small, wood-paneled room with soft lighting. A middle-aged man in a navy suit sat in an armchair, hands folded. The caption at the bottom identified him as Daniel Price, director of the Carver Foundation. We have been aware of recent online speculation, he said, voice measured. We have always respected Adrian's privacy since his withdrawal from public life. However, we cannot ignore possible evidence that he may be in distress. Is it him? The interviewer asked off camera. Price hesitated. We are not prepared to make any definitive public statement at this time, he said. But we can say this, if the man in that video is Adrian, then he has chosen to be unseen. And we, as a society, have chosen not to see him. There was a beat of silence before he added, almost under his breath, until now. Maya muted the TV and let the silence seep in. Her mind replayed the morning on a loop. The way he'd looked at her. The weight behind his simple words. You should be careful what you put in it. At 8:41 p.m., her phone lit up with a new notification from a local news app, live press conference at 9 p.m., NYPD and Carver Foundation to address viral video. She felt the world narrow to that one sentence. It was happening, one way or another. When 8:59 hit, she turned the volume back on. The screen showed a small stage set up in a community center on the Upper West Side. A blue curtain hung behind a podium. A few rows of chairs were filled with reporters, their faces uplit by phones and tablets. On the side, a sign read, West 86th Street Community Shelter. Her breath caught. A shelter. At 9:02 p.m., the director of the shelter stepped up to the microphone. She was a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a calm face. She introduced herself, thanked everyone for coming, then stepped aside. A man walked up to the podium. For a moment, Maya's brain refused to connect the dots. The man on the screen wore a clean white shirt and a gray blazer that didn't quite sit right on his shoulders, like he wasn't used to the weight of it anymore. His beard was trimmed but not completely tamed. His hair had been combed back, revealing a receding hairline and a faint scar near his temple. He squinted slightly at the lights, then looked straight into the camera. His eyes were the same. Good lighting, a different angle, a change of clothes, these things rearranged the surface, but underneath, he was the man on the sidewalk. The man she'd filmed. The man she'd laughed at. Good evening, he said, his voice still rough but steadier now. The room hushed. My name is Adrian. There was a ripple of noise, gasps, camera shutters, the rustle of people sitting up straighter. He raised a hand for silence. I've been given a lot of names in my life, he said. Painter. Husband. Father. Recluse. Ghost. A tiny smile ghosted across his lips at that last word. For the last few years, I've had other names. Hey, you. Sir. Buddy. Sometimes just a hand motion to move along. He gripped the sides of the podium, knuckles pale. Yes, he continued. I am Adrian Carver. Maya's vision blurred with sudden tears. Hearing him say it out loud made something inside her collapse and rearrange itself. He didn't launch into a dramatic story. He didn't cry. He simply told the truth, piece by careful piece. In June of 2014, he said, "When my wife and daughter died, the world decided what that meant for me. They wrote articles about my tragic genius. Auction houses raised the prices on my old work. People I'd never met gave interviews about my fragile state. They turned my grief into a brand." He took a breath. "I did not want to be that brand. So I left. I walked out of my studio one night with a small bag and enough cash for a few weeks and told no one where I was going. That was foolish, I see now. But at the time it felt like the only way to breathe." He glanced down, then back up. "I thought I could disappear into small towns," he said. "I did, for a while. I painted for myself. For walls that would be repainted in the next renovation. For people who didn't care about my name. Then the money ran out, as money does if you're not paying attention. I got sick. I missed deadlines. I lost track of the foundation's calls. And one day I woke up in a hospital bed with a social worker asking me if I had anywhere to go." He let that hang in the air. "I had nowhere," he said quietly. "So I walked. And when I stopped walking, I painted. On sidewalks. On cardboard. On canvas someone had thrown away. People would drop coins if they liked it. More often, they would walk past. Sometimes they would stop and tell me I was wasting my time." He looked straight into the camera then, the blue of his eyes almost unbearably clear. "This morning," he said, "a young woman stopped and filmed me. She laughed at my work. She turned me into a joke for a few seconds. And it hurt." He said it simply, without drama. "Not because she didn't recognize me. I've spent years making sure people wouldn't. It hurt because she couldn't see me. Not really. Just the jacket. The beard. The cup." Maya curled in on herself on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees, tears hot on her cheeks. It felt like he was talking directly to her living room. "But," he went on, and there was a shift in his tone, something gentler, "that same video brought me here. To this stage, to this shelter, to people who insist on seeing me as both what I was and what I am now. A man. Flawed. Stubborn. Grieving. Still painting." He gestured toward the side of the stage. 2 easels stood there, each holding a canvas covered with a cloth. "These are 2 of the paintings from this morning," he said. "The river and the woman under the scaffolding. I painted them as a way to remember that the city keeps moving even when you feel stuck. That life flows around you and you can either drown or learn to float." He nodded to the shelter director, who pulled the cloths away. Even through the TV screen, even in her shaken state, Maya felt the impact of them. The river looked like it was lit from within, every brushstroke a thin shard of light piercing the gloom. The woman under the scaffolding had her back turned, but there was something in the tilt of her head, a quiet defiance, a refusal to bend under the dripping metal and concrete world above her. "These were almost washed away by the rain," he said. "Instead, they'll be auctioned. Not for galleries, not for private collections, but for this shelter and others like it. For people whose names you'll never know." He paused. "As for the young woman who filmed me," he added, and Maya's heart tripped over itself, "I don't know her. I don't know her story. I know only that for a few seconds this morning, she forgot that I had one. I am not telling this story to shame her. I've made more than my share of mistakes. I am telling it because we need to remember something very simple. Genius, talent, worth, these things do not always look like we expect. Sometimes they are behind glass in a white room. Sometimes they are on a damp sidewalk next to an overflowing trash can." He smiled then, a small, tired smile that still somehow held warmth. "If you see someone on the street with a cup and a canvas," he said, "you don't have to empty your wallet. You don't have to fix their life. But look at them. Really look. You might not be looking at a lost legend. You might be looking at someone whose name the world will never know. And they are still worth more than a punchline. He stepped back from the podium to a flurry of questions shouted from the seats, but the shelter director moved in, ending the conference. The network cut to analysis, to experts, to opinions. Maya muted the TV again. The room felt heavy and quiet. Her laughter from that morning echoed in her memory like something from another lifetime. The person who had said, "Then I guess not much," felt like a stranger she wanted to step away from. She picked up her phone, opened the app, and scrolled to her video. She didn't delete it. Instead, she tapped Edit Caption and watched the cursor blink. The original words vanished. She typed, hands trembling, "I filmed this man this morning and made fun of him. Tonight I found out he is Adrian Carver. Even if he wasn't, what I said was cruel. I'm leaving this up as a reminder, to myself more than anyone, that you never know who you're looking at or what they've survived. I'm sorry." She hit save. Within seconds, comments started to shift again. Some people mocked her apology. Some praised it. Some ignored her completely and focused on him, as they should. She set the phone down and went to the small desk by her window. It had been a long time since she'd sketched anything for herself. Without thinking too much, she pulled out a pad and a pencil. Her hand hovered over the blank page. Slowly, carefully, she started to draw a man sitting on a sidewalk at 8:12 a.m. on a cold October morning. The cup. The brushes. The semicircle of paintings. The tired beanie and the sharp blue eyes. She added the rain-slicked street behind him, the blur of commuters moving past. Then, in the far corner of the sketch, almost too small to notice, she drew a woman standing with her phone, her face caught between a smirk and something unsure, as if she's standing on the edge of becoming someone a little kinder, a little more awake. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, the lines on the paper grew into a story she knew she'd be telling herself for a very long time. Because in the end, the real twist wasn't that the homeless man turned out to be a famous painter. It was that, for the first time, she understood how easy it was to reduce someone to a snapshot, and how powerful it could be to press pause, look closer, and remember that every person you pass has a whole lifetime behind their eyes, no matter what name the world has given them, or how invisible they've become.